Hello, I'm Dylan Sanders back with another video, another Stranger Things related video. And if you're a Stranger Things fan, the last few days have just been amazing with the poster yesterday and the announcement of the trailer today. And I had my alarm set for all the early times in the morning and it came out at 9 a.m. in my time zone. Woke up, watched the trailer, and I've just been watching it on repeat since then pretty much. I've seen it like 100 times. For me, the fifth season and final season of this show is one of my most anticipated fictional things ever. Like, this is up there on Endgame, No Way Home level of hype, and is honestly higher than either of those even. Like, it's number one. I'm so excited and pumped for the last season of this show. It's my favorite TV show of all time. It means a lot to me and just this world and these characters and everything. And so, yeah, I'm so excited, and this trailer somehow got me even more excited, if that's even possible, because it was just an amazingly well done trailer. It's called a teaser trailer on YouTube, but I mean, it was 2 minutes and 30 seconds, a lot of meat on its bones. Showed us a lot while giving away absolutely nothing at all, which is exactly what an amazing trailer should do. And so, yeah, now we're going to go through, talk about it, each scene, moment throughout the trailer, break it down, and just talk season 5 theories in general, talk about, the Tudum announcement and some other social media posts and things that have been come up from the last few months, and just, yeah, talk all things season 5 theories and all of that. And so, with no further ado, let's get started. So before we get into the actual trailer, the Stranger Things obviously posted it on Instagram and YouTube right at 9 o'clock, and I watched it immediately. But shortly after on Instagram, all, Ross Duffer and all of the actors and everyone then started posting it on their own Instagrams. And Ross Duffer, when he posted it, actually left us a little extra message in the caption on his Instagram post saying that this trailer features at least a singular moment or a singular scene from every single episode of the fifth season except for the seventh episode, the penultimate episode of the final season. So that means that we have seen something from the finale. Who knows what it is? I guarantee you it's like fucking like 2 seconds or something like that. Or 1 second even, one of like those flashes or just something completely out of context. But we have seen something apparently from the eighth and final episode of the show in this trailer. And it does also say, though, that with that, while saying that it has something from every episode except for the seventh, it also says that this is heavily Volume 1, which I already predicted, and I will talk about throughout the breakdown why I believe that is the case, and Ross Duffer then obviously kind of confirmed it already himself, that this is mostly stuff from the first 4 episodes, the 4 episodes that drop on November 26th. And then, yeah, the seventh episode, which is titled The Bridge, for whatever reason, has nothing in here. I don't know if there's a reason behind that, if everything in it is too spoilery to show anything or just didn't fit in the editing of the trailer. Who knows? But that was a nice little just extra tease from Ross Duffer when he posted the trailer on his Instagram. And now let's get into the actual trailer. So this trailer starts with our boy Steve Harrington inside of a van turning a dial or something on the ceiling, and then you see as he looks over to a radio type of setup where the decimals start raising on this radio from 0 to 100, and this is something that they keep cutting back to, this number kind of building intensity throughout the trailer. And then it cuts to outside the van, and we see that he's actually parked right outside the WSQK radio station, which from behind the scenes photos and stuff like that has been heavily teased as a major location for this fifth season, kind of like the Starcourt Mall in season 3 or the Creel House in season 4, definitely giving that vibes of this is going to be the home base of this season. Then we get the Netflix logo with the upside down stuff in the background, and then we see the van that Steve was in outside the radio station drive off, and Mike and Lucas follow him behind on bikes. And then you can even in the background, you can see Eleven standing there. Then you get a shot inside the radio station, and you get Will, Eleven, and then like a projector thing in the middle, and then Robin and Nancy all inside of the radio station. And I would imagine that this is right after Steve, Lucas, and Mike just drove off, and then, Eleven goes back inside. And then it pans over to Joyce, who's at like an actual like table with a radio set up, and you get the first dialogue in the trailer here, with Mike saying burn commencing, seems like over a radio to all of our other characters, counting down 5, 4, 3, 2, and then it stops. I assume he would say 1 next, but maybe shit goes awry, who knows. And as he's counting down, you get kind of this worried shot of Elle and Will both kind of giving each other a glance, and Nancy and Robin kind of all looking concerned almost. And then it cuts to Lucas as he's counting down, and as he says 4, you see Lucas with binoculars, and he's got like his camo bandana from back in like season 2, and he's got holding up the number 4 almost like he's looking at something, and I don't know, maybe he's telling Mike the number, there's no the countdown because he's watching something. And then you get Hopper saying come on, as if he's listening in on this plan and as a part of it as well and playing a part, but it could be cut from an entirely different scene, who knows. And then you have a shot inside of what I would imagine is like a relief center or something with just Hawkins citizens, as you know, the city has kind of gone to shit, and it shows that throughout the trailer after season 4 and the earthquakes with the rifts, with the gates and everything. And so you get some shots of some frightened children in this what I assume is like relief center with the lights flickering, which, you know, that means something's going wrong. And then it cuts back to the radio station with our group in there again, and you see the lights flickering in there. And then the final part of kind of this beginning of the trailer is at the end of the countdown, you see Will touching the back of his neck, and just he's like outside somewhere getting that feeling or whatever. And then it cuts back to the decimals going down again. So as for the beginning portion of this trailer, I think this is episode like 1 or 2. And it's some plan that the group has made up to either maybe try and close the portals, would be my guess, as they, you know, Mike says, burn commencing, and back in season 2 with Owens, you know, they would flamethrower the gates to try and like kind of close them off, keep them contained, which obviously wasn't working, so you'd think they would have learned from that, but that's the only thing I can imagine, is they're just trying to contain the gates, and they're, you know, trying to burn them away or close them back. I'm going to assume this is a plan from pretty early on in the season, and again, it doesn't end well, probably. It doesn't go their way, I would imagine. I also found it interesting who stayed back at the radio station versus who went. You know, you would think that if you're going to do, you know, whatever the hell it is they're going to do, could have some, you know, I assume someone attacking them or something. That's a possibility always. And so you would think that 11 would go with them, but she's staying back at the radio station. I would assume that was a strategical choice, whether because something that happens prior to this in this season, or just because of her connection to Vecna and the Upside Down and stuff. Who knows? Will also staying back. Those have kind of been the top 2 characters for a lot of people of being in danger, and they're both, you know, staying back at the radio station. I think that was on purpose due to their connection to the Upside Down. And then speaking of Will, with that scene of him touching the back of his neck again, kind of his iconic pose throughout the show, I think we're definitely going to get some answers about his connection to the Upside Down. Maybe he has a power or something related to it, or just, you know, he just can sense Vecna, whatever it may be. We're definitely going to get some more answers around Will's character and his time in the Upside Down and stuff. Then you just get a shot of like a road with showing military helicopters and cars driving, showing the military presence in Hawkins post, you know, what happened in season 4. It seems like it's almost like Hawkins is like a town on quarantine or constant military watch and supervision now. And you get Mike, Will, and Holly riding on bikes on the road in the opposite direction of the military cars. Holly's, you know, been confirmed to be playing a bigger role this season. A lot of people think that the second episode, the only title that hasn't fully been revealed, The Vanishing of Blank, a lot of people think it's going to be The Vanishing of Holly Wheeler, which means that by that logic, this would have to be like the first episode or so. And I think that this is maybe them riding to the military base, as there's definitely going to be a fight going down there, I think, definitely in Volume 1, as it was heavily shown in the Tudum tease, and is heavily shown throughout this trailer, this fight at this military base. So I think it's going to be the first big like fight of the season, maybe the end of the first episode, or maybe in the second episode. I definitely think it's early in the season, and they seem to be wearing similar clothes that we've seen them at those shots in that military base fight. Then you get a few more shots showing the military presence in Hawkins again, but this time they're at the Hawkins library that's, you know, featured throughout the first 4 seasons. And the first season is where Hopper and Joyce find Will in the Upside Down, where he's got the tentacle and everything in his mouth. And then in season 4, it's obviously where the 4 portals, 4 gates in the finale all converge at. And So it seems like the military has it completely closed off. You get kind of a wide shot angle of it, and you see walls up around it. And then it gets a closer shot with some soldiers walking past. In the background, you can see that it has like made a full-blown gate thing through the door and everything there. Probably the main gate where stuff is coming through from the upside down. And I definitely think we're going to get some type of reveal regarding this library. I just feel like it's too big of a coincidence that it's where the Demogorgon, or probably Vecna, honestly, took Will in Season 1, and it's where the four gates converged in Season 4 finale, and they're showing it in this first trailer. I definitely think we're getting some type of twist, some type of reveal regarding this library, its history, why Vecna has a connection to it, or why it's got to have a bigger purpose. I feel like it's way too big of a coincidence. Then we get the next voiceover in the trailer coming from Jonathan throughout like the next 4 or 5 scenes they show, saying, "After all we've been through, this thing ties us together forever." And that first part of that monologue of "after all we've been through" perfectly fits the first scene they show there of Dustin at Eddie's grave. And you see that it has been vandalized, spray painted, saying "burn in hell." As you know, at the end of Season 4, everyone still thinks that, he was the leader of the satanic cult, Hellfire Club and everything, and that he was the leader of and caused Chrissy and Fred and all their deaths. But despite that, Dustin's still rocking the Hellfire shirt. It's been like rip or torn though, whether that's just, happened because it's old or someone did that to him. Someone obviously graffitied this grave, whether it's the basketball players or just some asshole at Hawkins, who knows. And then that quote, "after all we've been through," fitting as well for the next scene with showing Max in the hospital still in her coma, and the close-up of Lucas holding her hand and then him crying by her side. And Max is no longer in her, she's still in a coma, but she's no longer in her full body cast, so that's a good sign at least. Then we get a shot of 2 people in hazmat suits with flamethrowers burning what appears to be the gate at the library shown earlier in the season. It's kind of hard to tell exactly, but I'm pretty sure that's where they're at. Very, again, reminiscent of from Season 2 of burning the gates in the lab. Whether this is the burn that, Mike is referencing at the beginning of the trailer, if this is, the plan or whatever, or if this is just a completely different burn, who knows. Then we get a shot of Jopper, Hopper, and Joyce together in what I would imagine is Hopper's cabin from the look and aesthetic of it. They were repairing it at the end of Season 4 for a place for Eleven to stay. And with, obviously Joyce, Will, and Jonathan having moved to California and now being back in Hawkins for this season, it would make sense that they would move in there as well and all live together as a family in the Hopper's cabin, so I imagine that that's where this is. Then you get a shot of Nancy, Jonathan, Steve, and Dustin, which seems to be one of kind of the pairings or groupings of this season, standing outside the lab. And it's hard to tell whether this is in the Upside Down or just in Hawkins, because the Upside Down has bled into Hawkins and everything, so it looks like the Upside Down, but this could also just be the lab in normal Hawkins, honestly. Then you have a shot of the Core 4 at what appears to be the bench outside of Hawkins High where Eddie and Chrissy talk in Season 4. And they have, all their hands in the middle. They seem to have just made a plan of some sort. Maybe the plan to attack the military base, as you see a map under their hands, and there's a military truck on it and some D&D pieces off to the side almost. So I would assume maybe this is them gearing up to go into the military base. And Dustin is the last person to put his hand on. He almost seems hesitant to it. Maybe he doesn't like the plan, doesn't think it's going to go well, whatever. Maybe, from trauma from Eddie's death, he's been more distant. Who knows? But it looks like he's kind of more hesitant and is the last one to put his hand on there. And then when he does put his hand on there, he's wearing Eddie's rings from Season 4, and from behind the scenes photos, we've also seen that he has Eddie's bat tattoo on his arm as well, which is cool. Then you get a shot of Mike and Eleven in what I assume is Hopper's cabin. Again, it looks similar aesthetic to the shot with Hopper and Joyce, as they are sitting on what looks to be a built-in tub in Hopper's cabin with a door and everything for the sensory deprivation for Elle, and Elle is in a swimsuit type thing, looking like she's about to go into the tub. And then you finally get to see Jonathan, and it shows that he was talking to Nancy as his lines were playing over the last 3 or 4 scenes that they showed here, and he wraps up his voiceover here as it shows them together in, again, what appears to be the Upside Down, but with the Upside Down bleeding into Hawkins and stuff, it could just be normal Hawkins as well. It's hard to tell. And then you get a shot of Elle with a very similar background to the Nancy and Jonathan scene with this blue Upside Down look to it. And she also then raises a bandana over her mouth, similar vibes to like season 2 when Steve and them all go into the tunnels and stuff with bandanas. So again, would lead me to believe that she's in the Upside Down here. Then we get one of the most goosebump inducing shots of the trailer, which I mean the entire trailer was goosebump inducing, but this was one of the highlights definitely of this shot of a Demogorgon on like a tree, as you see this kid jump from one tree to the other tree with red lightning in the background, giving, you know, Upside Down vibes there. And I've extra evidence as to why I think this is in the Upside Down is because I believe that that kid is Will from season 1, not present day Will. It's been heavily rumored that we are getting flashbacks to Will's time in the Upside Down in the first season, and it looks like that this person is wearing that red poofy jacket that Will wears in the first season when he's taken and is missing in the Upside Down. So I believe that that is what this is, and I think that throughout this season, because Will doesn't really remember his time in the Upside Down, kind of similar to how Elle doesn't remember the stuff with One and everything in season 4. I think they're going to do something similar to that in this season, where we get flashbacks of Will remembering his time in the Upside Down and that he probably met Vecna, and get a bunch of answers about Vecna, about Will, about the Upside Down, and all of that through these flashbacks to that first season with a CGI'd young Will Byers. Then you get this shot of what I assume is at the military base with the red like alarms flickering and some soldiers bursting through the door, and we get our first view at Linda Hamilton, who has been, you know, confirmed for a while to be in this season, but now we finally see her in action as what appears to be a military officer or general of some kind of what everybody thought she was going to be playing in this season, but now we've got it confirmed pretty much. Then we get this shot of Hopper and Elle in the Upside Down. They seem to be another prominent duo or pairing in this season. We get a lot of scenes with them in these clothes in particular throughout this trailer. And then it pans out to show kind of the wall looking upside down thing that we saw in the date announcement at Tudum as well. A lot of people have different theories about this. I think that it's the barrier of the Upside Down. That's my personal theory about it, is that the Upside Down is only a mirror of Hawkins, not of the entire world, and so Hopper and Elle are at the barrier of Hawkins in the Upside Down, and it just ends. That's my personal opinion, but could be a number of different things. Then you get a shot of what looks like Nancy and Jonathan looking up at like the sky in the Upside Down almost, and it looks like a portal is just like opening in the middle of the sky in the Upside Down, or it's just some completely new thing that's going on in the Upside Down that we'll find out about in this season. Then we get a shot of Steve and Dustin in a car. They're both off looking at something. Dustin's got binoculars on. My only guess could be maybe they're looking at, maybe they're outside the military base from scenes we see later in the trailer, and they're seeing Vecna arrive there at the military base. But who knows? And then also, as Dustin takes the binoculars off, you see bruises and stuff on his face with which the Hellfire shirt being ripped earlier in the trailer. My only guess could be maybe that the basketball players like beat him up early on in the season or something, for supporting Hellfire and Eddie and stuff. Or maybe it's something far worse than that, but definitely something's happened to him. And then we get a shot of a couple demo dogs at the hospital, which definitely, again, just pushes the fact that Hawkins is just getting overrun this season, I think, which makes sense with how season 4 ended. There's definitely a lot of different creatures all over Hawkins throughout this trailer, Demogorgons, now demo dogs and stuff here in the hospital. And then it cuts to Lucas hiding behind like a machine thing, holding Max in his arms, still in her hospital gown, and she appears to still be unconscious in her coma, and Lucas is probably just picking her up and carried her and trying to protect her as the hospital is being attacked, and it looks like a nurse or something is even right next to them. And this scene definitely gives off Jurassic Park raptors in the kitchen vibes, which is awesome. Then we get a shot that was one of the few that was in the Netflix Tudum date announcement of Elle screaming, but this time we actually get to hear the audio of her screaming with Hopper there holding her, the red lights flashing. I definitely think this is during that military base attack scene, as it's immediately followed up by this shot of soldiers shooting at the military base with some like already dead in the background, and then it cuts back to Hopper and Joyce, and you have Hopper like full on over top 11 protecting her as she seems to be like unconscious or something maybe, and keeping down under this like barricade as you see bullet holes in the background. Are the soldiers shooting at them, or are they shooting at something that's behind them? Who knows, but it looks real intense, and I'm scared for our characters here. Then we get a shot of Steve in the car again, and you can see Jonathan in the back seat, and from a like set photo from a while ago, we know that also Dustin and Nancy are both most likely in the car with them here as well. And as he's like driving through what part of the Upside Down or like tunnels or something as you see the red Upside Down stuff outside of the car. Then you get another shot that was in the Tudum date announcement video with Joyce with the axe in like the barn with Will and Robin behind her. But this time we get to find out what was beating on that door as a Demogorgon breaks through. So it, kind of answered that question that we had from the date announcement teaser. So it seems like maybe, Hopper took on a Demogorgon with a sword. Looks like we're now going to get Joyce taking on one with an axe. Then we get a shot of Will like passing out at what I assume is the military base based on later scenes we'll talk about. There's a lot of different ways you could go with this. Is Vecna possessing him? But it looks like he still has his pupils, and also when like Fred or Chrissy was possessed in the in season 4, they never like passed out, fell over. They just kind of stood there with their white eyes. So my guess would be more so that if Will does have a power, maybe he was just using it and is like exhausted, similar to 11, and is then passing out. Or maybe Vecna was cursing him and he just got out of him, and whatever he did to his brain, he's not conscious and is passing out. Those would be my 2 guesses there. Then we get a shot of Nancy reunited with her shotgun shooting at something. You don't want to mess around with Nancy when she has a shotgun. Then we get a shot of a Demogorgon like jumping onto the back of a truck on a road. Again, bring back to what I said about the Demodogs at the hospital. It definitely seems like it's just going to be carnage this season, and that there's just monsters everywhere, and you don't want to be in Hawkins. Then we get a shot of Karen and Holly submerged underwater in like a tub or something. I would imagine that they're hiding from Vecna, and maybe that this is right before Vecna takes Holly Wheeler, if that second episode is in fact called The Vanishing of Holly Wheeler. Then we get my favorite voiceover of the trailer coming from Hopper over the next like 3 or 4 scenes of saying, "Wherever this blood leads, I need you to fight one last time. Let's end this, kid." And I would imagine that these are probably lines from completely different points in the season, to be honest, that they mashed together for the trailer because it sounds badass. Who knows, maybe not, but that's my guess there. Then you get a shot of Robin looking up at what looks like maybe the WSQK radio tower with like the Mind Flayer smoke moving through it and stuff. So, just showing again they are bringing every monster we have seen back this season to wreak havoc on Hawkins. Then we get the scariest shot of this whole trailer with Nancy in the bathroom washing blood off her hands as she crying as you see her in the mirror. Definitely doesn't bode well probably for Steve or Jonathan here. And if you had asked me like 2 months ago, I would have said it would have been more likely for Steve to die, but with more content that we've gotten and just thinking about it more and how the journeys for the characters have gone, I'm actually leaning more towards, I think that there's more of a chance of Jonathan biting the dust here actually than Steve, but who knows? It could be just crying for some other reason, but it makes you scared for their characters for sure. Then you get a shot of Will closing his eyes. Maybe this is kind of the precursor to that scene earlier of him passing out. This is him starting to use his powers or getting cursed by Vecna or whatever, and then stuff happens and then he passes out at the end of it. And then we get one of, in my opinion, the most kind of heartfelt moments in this trailer here with Steve and Dustin fully embracing and hugging. And you see Dustin's face and he's clearly emotional and like crying. Again, kind of points towards not looking good for Jonathan. Steve, Dustin, and Nancy seem to be a pairing throughout this season, and we now see Nancy crying, and then now Steve and Dustin are still alive and together crying, although it could be before Nancy. It's just speculating, but it doesn't look too great for Jonathan, would be my guess. But also, I feel like this could be like Will or something like that, because I think that would pull more of an emotional response from Dustin probably if it was, Will or Lucas or something like that as well, and then Steve's comforting him. Or, if you want to get really dark, this could be Steve is about to make some sacrificial play, and, they're at a point in the plan, something's gone wrong, and Steve has to step up and is going to do what he always does and protect Dustin and protect everyone and make some type of sacrificial play or whatever, and this is like Dustin saying goodbye to Steve for the last time and them hugging and everything, which would be really sad if that was the case. Then you get Hopper and Elle again, I'm still assuming at the military base in those same type of clothes. Hopper's got a gun, Elle's standing there in front of him, and then it goes to Hopper actually showing him saying the lines that he's voicing over to 11. Although this time he's got a baseball hat on, where with most of the military base scenes he has like a beanie on, so I'm thinking this is a different scene, maybe later in the season, because I think the military base fight is going to be pretty early on in the season. And he is talking to Elle, you assume, based off his dialogue, and because you see like the hazmat type suit thing, or like the tank suit that Elle has from season 1 when she goes into the sensory deprivation tank, like that helmet type thing. It kind of looks like that a little bit, clear see-through type thing there that she's wearing. So maybe she's about to go into the void, into the sensory deprivation tank, and Hopper's, talking to her right before she goes in there. Followed up again by a scene of Elle in the water, although this time she doesn't have the sensory deprivation thing on, so I don't think that this is right after Hopper talking to her. I think this is actually after the scene earlier in the trailer with her and Mike at Hopper's cabin right next to the tub, because she's wearing that same type of swimsuit thing. So I think this is right after maybe that conversation of her getting in the sensory deprivation tank. Seems like we're going to get a lot of time with her in the void in this season, just like we always do. Then you get more Hopper and Elle together. This time Hopper back with the beanie again. Again, thinking it's at the military base again here. And it's very, from the shot earlier with Hopper kind of protecting Elle behind that barrier, it looks like it's that same type of thing. And Elle is still just laying there off to the side, leading me to believe that she is like passed out or something. And then Hopper, badass moment there. He pulls both their grenades and like throws them over his head or into the air or something there. And then it does show a shot of it like exploding, blowing a couple soldiers back, which does make me think that in that earlier scene, the soldiers were shooting at Hopper and Elle. Maybe they're after Elle. She is wanted. We've seen from like the wanted poster that they put on Instagram and stuff of 11 by the government, and based on the stuff from the end of season 4. So that could make sense that they're like hunting her. Then we go into like this montage type thing with a bunch of really quick shots here. The first one being this close up on Will's face, like screaming and terrified, and it looks like Vecna's hand and claw hand is right at his face, like he's about to possess him, similar to like Max and Dear Billy or with Chrissy in the first episode of season 4. And with some behind the scenes photos we saw a while ago of Noah Schnapp in like a harness, it's looking like he's definitely going to be possessed, or be cursed by Vecna in this season. Whether he gets a running up that hill moment and escapes, or he dies, we'll have to wait and see until the season comes out. But he's definitely on top of a lot of people's radar of a character that is in danger going into this final season. Then we get some quick flashes of some characters. You see Holly Wheeler and you see Lucas like lying on the floor, maybe in the upside down. It's like a weird surface behind him. And then we get a shot of Murray and Robin, which I think could be a fun new dynamic duo in this season. Never seen them interact, but I definitely could see them vibing well together and having some fun scenes together. Then we get a shot of Steve's car driving like through a fence. I assume again that Steve, Dustin, Nancy, and Jonathan are all in there, and it has like the radio signal thing on top of it that was on the WSQK's van thing from earlier in the trailer. And then you get some really quick flashes of some soldiers like running through the woods. There's a shot with Nancy with her shotgun again, this time with 11, and then someone's hand on like a dial turning it and then cutting back to the decimal number continuing to raise. And it then goes to this like extreme close-up on what looks like Will's eyeball as it almost like transitions into his eye as the camera gets closer, and cuts to like a tunnel that looks like almost like the tunnels from season 2, whether it's the same tunnels or not, who knows. And you have Lucas and Erica in there, and then someone a bit farther ahead in like a green jacket that I cannot tell who is. Maybe it's a new character. Then in between shots of the decimal number continuing to raise, we have a shot with Erica with like a syringe, as who knows what she's doing with that. Then we got like almost like a training montage type moment with 11 in her outfit that she's in with like Hopper in the upside down and stuff. And she appears to be at like the rundown junkyard from like season 2 where Steve and Dustin and Max and Lucas go to fight the Demo Dogs. And then we get from the Tudum teaser, the thing with like the panels shaking. We now, similar to like the barn door, get to see what was under those panels. Once again, it's a Demogorgon, and it bursts out into what, again, I assume is during the military base attack. And then what I was referring to earlier with Steve and Dustin in the car, like looking off into the camera, was we get shots here with Joyce and Mike both kind of doing the same thing at the military base, and you got Joyce next to what looks like unconscious Will, similar to how we saw in the Tudum date announcement teaser there. And then you get this like upside down, I don't know if it's a gate or what, like cloth looking thing ripping open with a shadowy figure behind it. And the whole trailer kind of climaxes right here where we get the decimal finally reaching to 100. It cuts to black, and you hear Vecna's voice say, "Found you." And then we get to see the Vecna redesign that has been teased heavily by the Duffer Brothers. And then with the teaser poster yesterday with Vecna's face on it and the shadow, like kind of, or clouds covering his eye. A lot of people were theorizing about his redesign, and people thought he had horns and all this stuff. Well, now here it is. We get to see the back of it at least, which still does keep the mystery of kind of if he's missing an eye and an arm. A lot of people, Eddie describes him in the D&D game in the first episode of season 4 as not having one eye and not having one arm. And then at the end of season 4 being burnt by the Molotovs and stuff. A lot of people thought that they would actually incorporate that into the real Vecna and he'd be missing an eye and an arm. And you can't really tell, definitely not the eye, and you can't even really tell if maybe part of his other arm is gone that's behind him. But definitely has one arm as he's using it like freaking Darth Vader, like he has the Force holding back the fire from, I assume, the soldiers or something. Or it almost looks like he's opening a gate even, kind of. But you get the like almost spiky look on his back and everything. And I imagine this is his grand entrance at the military base, what everyone's looking at and everything. That's going to be either episode like 1 or 2, I think. This is going to be like the climactic moment. It seems like a lot to do in the first episode, but who knows how long it's going to be. And I think the second episode, with the vanishing of Holly Wheeler, you got to have Vecna already kind of be there to, take Holly, would be my guess. So I feel like this could be like the climactic end of the first episode even, which again seems insane for the first episode to have this giant battle, but we're going huge in scale and everything for this final season, clearly from this trailer. So I wouldn't put it past the Duffer Brothers to have Vecna have this epic entrance at the end of the first episode at this military base attack that they're heavily teasing in all the trailers and stuff, which makes me think it's going to be early in the season. And that is my full breakdown of this amazing trailer we got today. This is just the beginning of the journey to season 5. We're going to get way more, I'm sure, posters, merchandise, maybe 1 or 2 even more trailers. We still have over 3 months till November 26th when season 5 comes out. I'm super excited, and this trailer gave me everything I wanted from a trailer. It was amazing. And so make sure you go down there, hit that like and subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any future videos, including a lot more videos covering Stranger Things Season 5 and just other rankings and stuff for the show. And I'll see you all next time.